All right, let's get into it. Today we're cracking open F. Scott Fitzgerald's absolute masterpiece, The Great Gatsby. We're going to explore the really dark side of the American dream by looking at the spectacular collision of three men. Our narrator, Nick, the brutish Tom Buchanan, and of course, the mysterious Jay Gatsby himself.
So let's start with our guide through this glittering, totally chaotic world, our narrator, Nick Carraway. Now, he introduces himself as this trustworthy, down-to-earth guy from the Midwest, just trying to make it out east. But as we're about to see, he is far from an impartial observer.
Nick kicks off his entire story with this piece of advice from his father. And that's a very deliberate move. He's trying to set himself up as credible, telling us right from the get-go, hey, I reserve judgment, I'm objective, you can trust me.
He really wants us to see him as fair-minded, right? But just a few sentences later, his own words kind of betray this whole careful setup. He reveals this deep-seated bias that's going to color the entire story he tells us.
And boom, there it is. He flat out admits his own snobbery right on the back of his father's. Look, this is not just some throwaway line. This is the key to understanding the entire book. Nick's class bias is the lens through which he sees everything and tells us everything.
And this bias is exactly the lens we get when he shows us Long Island. Right away, Nick presents us with a world that's just starkly divided, not just by water, but by class, by history, and by values.
So the whole point, as Nick himself puts it, is this bizarre and not a little sinister contrast between the two. You've got East Egg, which is all about that entrenched, inherited power of old American families, and then you have West Egg, the flashy, kind of gaudy home of the newly rich.
You can just picture how Nick describes East Egg, right? It's all about established grandeur. These aren't just houses, he calls them palaces. This is the home of his cousin Daisy and her husband Tom Buchanan, the absolute embodiment of old money's casual power.
But then, in sharp contrast, you have Gatsby's place in West Egg. Nick describes it as a copy, an imitation. Yeah, it's enormous and impressive, but to him, it's spanking new, and it's trying way too hard to look old. A perfect symbol for the manufactured status of its owner.
So this whole geographical divide, it's perfectly embodied in the two men at the heart of the story, Tom Buchanan from East Egg and Jay Gatsby from West Egg.
These two guys represent the core conflict of the whole novel. It's the immovable, careless power of inherited status smashed up against the desperate, romantic ambition of the self-made man. And let's be real, they're fighting over a lot more than just a woman. They're basically fighting for the soul of the American dream itself.
Nick's description of Tom is almost completely physical. He sees him as this force of nature, powerful, dominant, and ultimately cruel. Tom's power doesn't come from anything he's done. It comes from who he is, and his physicality is just a reflection of that unearned social dominance.
But here is the novel's central contradiction, and it's a big one. Nick claims he scorns everything Gatsby represents, yet he is completely captivated by the man's idealism. This is the real conflict in Nick's narration. His own snobbish judgment is at war with his romantic admiration for this guy.
Listen to Tom's reaction to Gatsby. This isn't just jealousy. It's pure classism. To him, Gatsby is a crazy fish, some outsider who just doesn't belong. This one line reveals his deep-seated fear of social climbers getting anywhere near his world or his woman.
And you know what? Tom isn't totally wrong about Gatsby being an invention. The truth is, Jay Gatsby is a character, an ideal that was born from the mind of James Gatz, a poor farmer's son. He didn't just change his name, he willed a whole new person into existence, springing from what Fitzgerald calls his Platonic conception of himself. It's the ultimate American act of self-creation, and it was all designed to erase his past and win Daisy.
So Fitzgerald does something amazing here. He distills all these complex themes of class, ambition, and corruption into two powerful, opposing symbols that basically loom over the entire story.
These two images, they represent the two poles of the American dream in this book. You've got the shimmering, unattainable future on one side and the grim, forgotten reality that actually fuels it on the other.
This is the wasteland that the rich have to pass through, but thankfully for them, they never have to live in. It's a world of industrial ash and moral rot, a place that physically represents the consequences of their careless world. It's here that Tom has his affair, and it's here that a life is destroyed, all while the wealthy just drive on through.
And this just brilliantly illustrates the tragedy. For Gatsby, that tiny green light at the end of Daisy's dock is literally everything.
It represents his dream, his past with Daisy, and a future that seems so close he can almost touch it, even as it's constantly slipping away. Oh, this brings us to the inevitable, tragic conclusion of the story. The complete and utter failure of Gatsby's dream in a world with these rigid, uncrossable social barriers that new money just cannot break through.
In that final confrontation, Tom just effortlessly destroys Gatsby. He uses his power, his connections, to expose where Gatsby's money really came from, bootlegging. And in one swift move, the old money establishment reveals the corrupt foundations of the new money dream and puts it back in its place.
And here's the thing. In the end, nothing can touch them. After all the chaos and death they've caused, Tom and Daisy, in an act of casual cruelty that comes directly from their class superiority, they just retreat into their immense wealth. Their status is a shield, and they leave other people, like Gatsby, to face the deadly consequences.
And at this moment, Nick has his final devastating realization. Gatsby's dream, it was never about the future at all. It was this obsessive attempt to recapture a moment from the past, a moment that was already lost forever, long before he even showed up in West Egg.
And this is the novel's final, absolutely haunting takeaway. It suggests this fundamental tragedy in the whole American idea of progress. We think we're fighting for a future, but maybe we're all just boats struggling against the powerful current of our own history, constantly being pulled back. So it leaves us all to wonder. Is the dream itself a destination we can reach if we just try hard enough, like Gatsby believed? Or is it just a current that no matter what we do, ultimately just carries us right back to where we began?